Brent geese are an incredibly important species for the Solent, and particularly in the Langston area. They're creatures of habit, and they're creatures that live for a very long time. They develop a behaviour where they return to the same areas each year, and the Solent coastline offers perfect overwintering habitat for them. The cycle of the Brent geese really is that the birds breed in Siberia and the tundra, and then as the cold weather starts to come in, they move further south. They overwinter along the Solent coastlines, also the east coast of Britain and around northern Europe as well. Now, these conditions are much milder and there's much more food for them available than there would be in the Siberia tundra where they breed. So what the geese do is they return to the area in October and they start to feed initially out in the harbours, out on the coastline, and what they really start to do is feed on the eelgrass and the seaweeds. And as the winter progresses and the seaweed becomes less available and it's more scarce, they'll start to move inland, feeding on coastal habitats. They particularly like grassland, which can obviously be controversial for local people, particularly when it comes to sports pitches and golf courses. But they do favour short, sweet grass. So any coastal grassland areas are particularly important for Brent geese. Over the years, obviously, the areas become more industrialised, more urbanised, so more housing, more industrial units. And every time we have a new development, it can lead to more green space being lost. If green space is lost, then those Brent geese are going to move around and feed in different areas. The birds are heavily protected, so obviously we need to ensure that the areas remain where they can still feed in relative safety. And it's also important that these areas are big enough to offer them, areas where they're not disturbed. So areas that aren't heavily used by people or by dog walkers or by recreational activities. So it's vitally important that green areas are left for these birds to use. So survey work is incredibly important in mapping out areas where the birds are using around the area, so it gives us a good overall viewpoint and picture of how the birds use our Solent coastline. I think the key thing for the public is looking at the environment in a bigger picture and understanding its value. I mean, it's very much there for you to enjoy, for you to go there, see the wildlife, but you can help in many ways, and most of them are very simple ways. In the winter months when the conditions are cold and harsh, birds in particular need areas where they can rest, particularly over the high tide period when they're pushed out of the harbour areas, they're pushed off the coastlines and they're pushed inland. So they'll be using all these green areas to rest and preen and just wait out the high tide periods. So at this time they're very susceptible to disturbance. So if there's people using the sites or if there's dogs running around, they'll see that as a threat and they'll fly away. Each time they fly away, they're using up valuable amounts of energy. In the winter, this is particularly bad if they're disturbed too much. They're using up valuable energy, and if the disturbance levels are too high, the mortality rates increase. So it's important that, green spaces, if there are birds using them, just give the birds plenty of room, plenty of scope to just carry on what they're doing. For us as a charity, we're all about engaging with the local public. So for us, it's very rewarding when people come to our sites and learn about the wildlife, but also for when people come to us and report things they've seen, so recordings of birds, numbers they've seen, different species, even in their back gardens. This is all really important and valuable data. There are various ways for people to report things they've seen. They can contact us via our website, through our feedback email address. They can ring in sightings to us. And there's also other charities such as the RSPB, National Trust, other groups who will be taking in data. You can get involved through volunteering, so being part of the survey teams, through conservation work, through practical maintenance of the sites. So there's all manners and means of getting involved.